service. We've had the Advent reading. We're going to think and reflect on that a bit more later on in the service. But just now, I'm going to talk about Christmas decorations. I think some of you have had Christmas decorations being given out to you over the last few weeks. How many people have their house decorated already? Very good. How many of you got it up the day that you normally get it up every year in terms of making sure? Like my family tradition is the 1st of December. Yeah? How many people have the tradition you put your Christmas decorations up on the 24th? Quite a number. And either that's because you're so busy beforehand, or it is because you really do have a tradition of that. So for me it was the 1st is normally the one, but I didn't quite make it till about the 6th or the 7th this year. Home Manor House, the residence lounge, was beautifully decorated by the 1st of December, but I didn't get round to doing my own. So, on the first week of Advent, I believe you were all given, or anybody who wanted to take one, a particular one. It wasn't a globe, it wasn't a Christmas decoration, it was a globe. And what was it? A stress ball. I love that concept. That on the first Sunday of Advent you get a stress ball, just in case. But really, obviously, the whole point of that was that it told us that God loves the whole world. What was the second week? The candy cane. Did you hear the story of the candy cane last week? And how it came about and what the stripes mean and so on. There's the gospel message right there in the candy cane. Today's one is something different. Can anybody guess what it might be? There was a bit of a hint in the readings. Linda's got her hand up. I think it's because she knows the answer.
I've seen it already.
So she's seen it. So that's cheating. Does anybody else have a guess? A donkey? Did you say a donkey? I wish it was a donkey, because then I'd have been tempted to get a real one and bring it in just for fun. No, today's is... They're so small you might not even see them. It's a star. I love the idea of stars. I've got lots of stars in my house and they all have tinsel, which means that there's lots of tinsel all over my carpet because I can't buy expensive ones. I always buy the ones that are going to lose their tinsel. But there you go. So lots of sparkly stars for us to have. Why do you think we have a star for Christmas Advent? Star led the way to Jesus. It points to Jesus. Who was it that followed the star? Magi, wise men, whatever you want to call them. Kings. Everybody has a different word for them, don't they? They followed the star. That's what we've been told in the Bible. They followed the star and it took them to Jesus. So that's a good way for us to remember that. But I like that idea, that phrase. It points towards Jesus. If you're going to be here next week, this is a little prompt for next week, a little advert. If you're going to be here next week, anybody who sits at the table that's about the Magi, the wise men, the kings, if you sit at that table, you have a word to say, or a sentence to say, and it will be, follow that star. Because that's what they did. And they told others that they were following the star. They were following the star in order that they could get to Jesus. Advent is more about what's to come for us, not just looking back. What's to come in the days ahead and in the future. So as you think about this star, and they will be given out at the end for anyone who wants one, as you think about the star and you look at it on your tree, maybe year on year if you keep it long enough. As you think of that, think about what it says about the future too. Are you still following the stars, the pointers? the signs that God gives you as an individual in your Christian life. Advent is about the waiting process for God to come, the second coming. In that context, what is he showing you? How is he pointing you along the way? What is the star that you are to follow in order that you can do God's work in these days of waiting for the second coming? That stress ball is a reminder of the fact that sometimes we lose what Christmas is really all about. This is my favourite. I'm going to come out here so you can all see it. Sorry, people on Zoom, you might not see it. This is my favourite t-shirt at the moment, given to me by a friend. It says, Jesus is the reason for the season. I love wearing this t-shirt because that is what it's all about, isn't it? If you've got to wear a Christmas jumper, that's what it is. Really, if I'm honest, it's my non-Christian friends that buy me these t-shirts, and my non-Christian sister-in-law who buys me sweatshirts with Christian messages on, because what else do you buy for Auntie Maureen? Do I mind? No, because actually it shows they're thinking about it. Jesus is the reason for the season. The wise men were given a star to follow. Each one of us has our own symbol, star symbol, that God says, follow in your waiting time for the second coming. Seek my will and follow your star so that you can find me. Thank you. So I'm going to focus. Oh, it's not. Oh, it's okay. That's all right. I suddenly looked up and thought, oh, I'm going to preach a different sermon to the one I've got in front of me. So I've taken the passage that we had for the Advent readings today, so that we can reflect on that a bit more. And it might surprise you when you when I start off, because I'm probably taking it from a different angle to the one that most of you would think of in this concept. But I've called this breaking the expectations. We all have expectations of what we're thinking Christmas is going to be like, our expectations of life. I don't know about you, but I sit in on many discussions with families about what they expect for their family life. And they have such wonderful ideals. It doesn't always happen the way that they expect. But there's the ideal there, there's an expectation. Sometimes those expectations can be so strong that we are frightened to try and do anything because we're not going to meet the expectations. When I was a child, I always wanted to be my sister. I longed to be my sister because everybody liked my sister. Nothing changed over the years, but nonetheless, and I always wanted to be like her until my father sat me down one day and said, "We have no expectation that you will be like Dorothy." Praise the Lord for that. And the reason he said that is because he then went on to say, here is a list, he should have been a psychologist, here is a list of all the things that you can do that Dorothy can't. Therefore, you need to be you. You don't need to strive to be her. We have not got that expectation. What a different life I led because he had that conversation. How different would it be if he spent, like my piano teacher did, the whole time telling me, if you were Dorothy, you would do this. Hence the fact that Dorothy was a very good pianist and I wasn't. There are expectations, and this particular passage is all about breaking the expectations that the world had. As we think about Advent, as we think about Christmas, as we think about the second coming, let's get rid of the expectations and start thinking about what it's really all about. Do we have the PowerPoint to go up? Hopefully. Joy. This is the third Sunday in Advent, and its concept is joy. We have joy up there you go. Joy is the thing, and we had that passage this morning from Isaiah 35. And as I think about that passage, if we can have the next slide, thank you. As I look at that passage, I see it as a passage that is all about the journey that we're on with God. Whether that's a journey that we're on in terms of day-to-day living, whether it's a journey of our spiritual life, whatever it is, Advent invites us to journey, and this passage, I think, shows us something of that journey that we are on with God. As I looked at the passage, I've divided it into different segments. If we can have the next slide, thank you. Here they are. This is just so you can know where I'm going with this, all right? So the first part I'm going to do is just put it into its own setting and look at that, and then after we've done that, then we're going to look at the whole concept of the wasteland and how it becomes a garden and the promises behind that, that there's a weakness and it becomes strong. It's talking about the lame and how they then start to leap, that there's drought and then there's delta and it's wonderful, there's wilderness, and the wilderness leads to a highway. So that's where we're going. That's the journey we're talking about as we look at this passage this morning. I wrote down, the first words I wrote down in my notes when I was considering this is, it starts in a desert. And then I started to think about the Christmas story, and I thought, it starts in a desert too. Now, you may not think of Bethlehem being in a desert, but nonetheless, that's where we're at with this. I thought about it of being a desert place. Why would it be thought of as a desert place? Deserts are wonderful things. Has anybody here been to a desert place? Where have you been? Oman. Anywhere else? Africa. Right, so there's lots of different ones, aren't there? The world over. I lived in the desert. I see I can, just for a while, just on the edge of the Sin Desert, and it is an amazing place. There's something beautiful about a desert, even though it's just sand. There's very little vegetation in the desert. It's a dry place. When it's hot, it is really hot. But when the sun goes down, it's actually really very cold. And you need those warm things. It's a desert place. There's something beautiful about it, but it is a desert place. Bethlehem wasn't itself in a desert, but it was built in a hill not far from a desert place. So they knew what it was about. But really, that's not what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of this context of this being a desert place. I'm thinking of it more that spiritually, the people of Israel were in a desert place. Their expectations of what was going to happen, because they were the people of God, were not working out quite the way they anticipated. And actually, if you look in the Old Testament, there's lots of different places where that is the case. There's Moses. Did it work out the way they all expected? No. They had to go, and they were wandering the desert place for a long time after they left Egypt, before they went to the promised land. There's Noah. When you think about that, when God created the world, did he anticipate that it would all be falling apart? That there would be so much disruption that he would have to then send Noah and give Noah, the only faithful family, instructions as to what to do? All the way through the people's history, we see this cycle of them coming spiritually, being strong, and then going spiritually and being into a desert place in that context. So the setting of this passage is where the people of Israel are once again in a desert place in many respects. Isaiah's written this, and he's written it in a time when they were, they'd been in exile. The Babylonians, the Assyrians had come and taken over, and there was devastation, and they were in exile and so on. And then some of them come back, and they are rejoicing. They are going home. And when they get there, it's complete destruction. There's nothing left of their homes. I was talking to a lady from Ukraine just not long ago, who said that's exactly what happened to her family. They escaped, and then things were settling down in the area they came from. So her husband said, "I'll go home and prepare the way for you all to come." And they were very excited until he got there and sent a photograph of rubble on the ground, because everything they possessed was gone in the fighting. That's exactly what had happened to these people who were excited about going back to Jerusalem. But when they get there, they find a wasteland. That's the setting that this passage is written in, that Isaiah is talking to them in. That when you read this passage, that's where we're at with it. So with that in mind, we're going to come on to the first one, and we're going to talk about the wasteland. From wasteland to garden. In those early verses, he talks about what is going to happen. The desert will rejoice. Flowers will bloom in the wastelands. The desert will sing and shout for joy. It will be as beautiful as Lebanon. As beautiful as the Lebanon mountains. There's wasteland now, but it will be something special. Can you imagine what they felt like as they heard that, standing in the midst of the rubble? I don't know about you, but if I'd have been them, I think I would have been thinking, an awful lot of work to do before then, man. Because there would have been. But, says Isaiah, physically, this place can be transformed. It will take work. It's not going to happen overnight. It can be transformed, and it will once again be beautiful. Spiritually too, the message is there. That even if you're spiritually in a desert place, he says to them, if you're wondering about God, God can transform it, and it may not happen overnight. There is lots that can be done. It's a wasteland, but when we all work together as a team, a bit like lighting candles, when everybody takes their part and works together as a team, that wasteland can become a garden once again. When we are following the star, the symbol, the sign that God gives us as individuals of how we move forward in our journey with him, that's the time that God says, follow me, follow the star, follow the thing that I am giving you to walk with. And once again, your desert place can become a garden. As we read this in Advent, we can think about the fact that Isaiah is known to be the one who prophesied the Messiah that was coming. And as he prophesied that, and in this passage, as he talks about these wonderful gardens that are going to come, the beauty that will come out of this wasteland, up this desert area, as he talks about that, you can just imagine people are making plans of how this will come about. As Isaiah talks later on in his book about and gives prophecy of the Messiah that is coming to do this, people will be thinking, yes, we know the sort of Messiah that is going to come. And we know from the story of Christmas itself that the expectations that they had was that they were in a desert place. The Romans had taken over. And they were all under the Roman rule. And the Jewish people had the expectation that Messiah who would come would get them out of that they would no longer be under Roman rule. They had the warrior king in their mind. That was their expectation. And God says, that's not how it's going to be. God said to these people, you came back, expected it to be just as you left it. It isn't. It's rubble. But I will make it beautiful again through you. Don't be disheartened. Trust me. All the way through Scripture, when he calls people to do things that they don't know the end result of, he says, walk in faith. Follow the star in faith. Follow me in faith. Walk with me in faith. You don't know the end of the story, but if you do as I ask, it will happen. And Isaiah, in that context, is giving this message to them, to those people who've returned and found nothing. I will make this wasteland into something beautiful again. You as my people may be in a desert place. I will make it beautiful once again. He says to us today, you may feel like you're in a bit of a wasteland moment. You may feel like your whole life has fallen apart. We all know what it's like to have those ups and downs in life, don't we? I've had a few of them in the last few months. So have you, I'm sure. We could all mention those. One of the things that God has taught me is that when you get to that wasteland part of your life, the down bits, we always want to make that better, but we can't always make it better. And actually those down times are as much part of life and our life with God as those glorious up times. You know, when we are really on a high in every sort of way, we don't try and bring ourselves back to an even keel, do we? We want to stay up here. But when we're low, we want to get back up here. But God says, trust me in this. Don't try and change it, unless it's something you've done of your own making. But if you're in a downtime of your life, trust me, walk with me, follow my signs, follow my signals for you, follow the star in your life for where I want to take you as an individual, and I will take you from the wasteland and make it something beautiful. And in those both ups and downs in your life, God says, embrace them. Don't try and get rid of them. Embrace them and learn from them. Trust me within it. So that's the first promise that we hear. The wasteland becomes a garden. And the second one, if you can have the next one, thank you, talks about weakness becoming strong. Weakness becoming strong. The prophet uses this concept of how this feeble people, the feeble hands, will be strengthened. Those knees that are quaking, they will become strengthened. Fearful hearts will become strong. Why? Because they've no need to be fearful, because God is there with them. Your God will be with you. That's the phrase. We got it up there. Emmanuel, God with us. In the Old Testament, the prophet said to the people of that time, whatever you're going through, God will be with you. He will strengthen you. He will get you through. Embrace this situation. When it comes to the time of Christmas, Emmanuel, God with us. He is with us. He is the one who's going to strengthen us and take us through. When we think about the second coming, and we are waiting in anticipation of what that second coming will be like, we do it with the knowledge that God is with us. That even when we're fearful, even when things are not going the way we want, we can trust in him, we can hold on to him and trust in that context. And in that way, we are told that those who are weak become strong. Those who are weak become strong in their faith, strong in what they're doing. Physically strong? Maybe not. But strong in the Lord and what he wants to do. This church, and many individuals in this church, have had those hard times of wasteland times. But you know what? God says, you're with me in this. You're with me in this. It's my plan. I have something for you. You may feel weak, but in God, he's going to make you strong so that his plan can be fulfilled. Be strong, do not fear. Your God will come and will be with you. The next one, lame leaping. I've got a bit of a bad hip at the moment. So as I was preparing this, I was thinking, well, Lord, that would be really nice. You know, one of those hips that when you get up out of the chair, you have to stand for a minute before you can put weight on it. And I'm looking there and I'm thinking, well, Lord, that would be really nice if I could suddenly be like that man at the temple, you know, leaping and praising God and joyful. That's the promise that is given here. That you might feel physically lame, says the people, or physically unable to do it, as they're standing there in this place that they thought was going to be home and that they could rejoice in being back in. You may be in that desert place, but, says Isaiah, you may feel as if you're so weak that you're lame, that you're disabled, that you're not able to do things, that you're blind, that you can't see the future, you can't see what's happening. But God will come and will be with you, and in that context, the eyes of the blind will be opened, the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame leap as a hart. I love that idea, that all those things that you think of as being really negatives will be completely transformed. I don't think it's insignificant that when we think about Jesus and his ministry, these things happened. They happened. But this is a promise that God, through Isaiah, is given to the people of Isaiah's time. It's a future promise for those who were looking for the Messiah. It's a future promise for us too, because they're all still true. That God, whether it be physically or spiritually, will be opening the eyes of the blind. As you go out and you seek to give the Christian message to people in your place of work, in your street, in the place where you live, or wherever you come across people, as you seek to give them the message, the real reason of Christmas, whether that's by your behaviour, whether it's by the things that you say, remember this: the eyes of the spiritually blind will also be opened. Those who just don't see it, they will be opened. Those who have heard for many, many years the story and the meaning of Christmas could be classed as the deaf, but their ears will be opened so that they can hear and take on board. Those who are spiritually lame, as well as physically lame, will be healed. There will be a transformation. I love the way that he takes all these different examples of things that they will know and understand to explain to them both the physical change that will happen in that place, but also the lessons that there are for their spiritual life that can be given. They're going to be those who will think they're lame, who think that they're crippled spiritually, but God will come and everything will change. The next slide and the next thing is drought to delta. Again, it's this returning to the desert place and thinking about what the desert place is. And it talks this time about how the water will come and will flood the land so that there will be life in that desert place once again. I have a bit of a personal experience of this. When I was in Pakistan, there was a flood one time, and it was travelling down the country. And I was going out to do some flood relief work to a village that was about to be hit by the flood. Everybody told me I was crazy to be going into it when everybody else was trying to get out of it. But nonetheless, there were people there who needed the help. And I was driving along, as I say, I lived on the edge of the desert. So I was driving along this desert road. And I'm not a person that gets pictures to be interpreted. But on this occasion, as I was driving along in my Jeep, along this desert road, I got this picture of the fact that the spiritual significance of this flood is a picture of what's happening spiritually, or was going to happen spiritually, in that area within Pakistan. That just like throughout the whole of Pakistan, this water was making its way down even to the desert places. God's Spirit was going to move even to those desert places, to the places where everybody was spiritually dry. And in that same context, I looked to the right on this desert road, and there was a field that had been irrigated. The water had been allowed to go in. I hadn't got to the flood area, but this was a purposeful irrigation of this thing. And it was beautifully green. This desert land had been made beautifully green, and crops were growing. And then I looked to the left, and on the other side, there was no irrigation. Nothing had come, and it was as dry as a bone. There was not a sign of green anywhere to be seen, just lots of sand dunes. And it was like God said to me, the Spirit is going to move in this place, in this country, and come down from top to bottom. And there will be those places, those people that are ready to receive, and they will become irrigated. They will become, from that desert place, there will become green crops, spiritual crops. But there will also be those who are not willing to take it, and they will be like the desert place. That's the sort of context that we're talking about here, that Isaiah is saying to the people when you look around you, you see nothing but wilderness. But the streams, the pools will come. Physically they'll come, and once again, we will not just have wasteland, we'll have a place that is joyous to live in. But spiritually too. Look out for what God is going to do. And I give you that challenge today. Where are the streams of water that are coming for your life? For your life as a church, you're on a new venture. It's going to start next year with somebody new leading you. Where are you going? What are you anticipating? You might have expectations that are not realistic. Look to God, to that little star sign again, that symbol. What is God saying to you about the future? Where is God leading you? Not your expectations, his expectations. What is going to happen when you go out of the desert land, the desert wasteland, and bring it to a place that is joyous? Who knows? God knows. Our responsibility is to move with him and trust him. We can have the next one. The last one here is the wilderness to a highway. And that's what I've just been talking about. This highway, Isaiah says to them, there is a highway that will be there, and it will be called the Holy Way. And it is for those who will journey with him, the redeemed who will journey. Those who have accepted him, who will journey with him. That's a special highway. You know, I've got in my head a picture that my dad used to have in his little, well, we called it his study, just like the little nook under the stairs, really. But we called it his study. And he had this picture on the wall, and it was the broad and the narrow way, and the choice you had to make. Here we're told that from the wilderness of your life, there is a highway for the redeemed to walk. So the people of Israel would have heard that as, this is the devastation. We are God's chosen people, the redeemed. We must walk in this pathways for us, not for anybody else. But in the new understanding, in the new covenant, where Jesus is part of that, what we can say is that there is a way. This is the way. Walk in it. It's the path for the redeemed that will lead to heaven. That's what's being talked about. So in this prophecy of Isaiah, there's not just a thinking about the people of that time. There's a thinking about the Messiah who's coming to change everything. And we know that happened in Easter. Easter, Christmas even. It happened at Easter as well. But he came at Christmas. And then this prophecy is still there for the likes of us today, because there is still significance in it of what it says to us, that we as the redeemed people are walking on that pathway. We don't want to go from right to left. We want to go straight on that pathway, following the signs that God gives us. If we do that, and Isaiah says this too, thank you, the last one, we will receive, it says, everlasting joy. If we follow, if we take his word for everything, if we are walking in his way, then everlasting joy will crown our heads. You'll have a crown. You'll be like prince and princesses with a crown. Not a crown of anything else, but an inner joy that says, whether I'm in the wasteland of the desert or in the high mountaintop beauty, I can embrace what God has given me with a deep inner joy. That does not mean that you can't be sad at times. It does not mean that when something goes wrong in your life, you can't have a good cry. If it does, I've been hopeless in the last month or so. But what it does mean is that you embrace that and say, I'm doing this with God. And there's an inner joy within me that says, I can follow that star even though I don't know where it's taking me, just like the wise men didn't know where they were going. I can follow it step by step because I have the promise that the wasteland is going to become beautiful. I have the promise that God will come and will be there with me in all that we do and all that we say. As we bring this part to a close, I found a video that actually expresses this passage and reads this passage again. And I just want you to just listen to the passage and watch the video if you want to, or just listen to it, whichever you prefer. And while you're doing that, just ask God to show you what the equivalent of your star that you need to follow is. That as he takes you into this place where that wasteland is going to become a beautiful place, what is it that you have to do? What's your part in all of that? So let's watch that now.
No matter what happens, what the world or the flesh or the devil throw at us, you never leave us or forsake us. Help us to keep our eyes fixed firmly on you and to follow that star. I just pray, Father God, that you will use us this week to bring about your kingdom. Help us to remember, Lord, that we have Jesus to share, and just help us to show people his love. Even if we don't say anything, just help us to show that love that you have shown us to the people we meet and to our families, Lord. In Jesus' precious name, amen.